Hey, everybody. Welcome to what I think is episode 6 now of the Cyber Edge. I'm Drew Fearson, your host, joined today by the one, the only Eric Moseman. Eric, welcome. So, everybody gets an intro. Eric, current CRO at IronNet. Prior to that was CEO and CRO at Fidelis, CRO at Brightfield, VP of sales at a number of cyber companies, and started off as a consultant at Accenture. So quite a journey that you've had throughout the years to get to where you're at.
Yeah, definitely.
Very good. Well, thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Like I said, we've known each other for a couple months now, dealing with some different things and opportunities, and I thought it would be a good idea to do something a little bit different in this episode. Traditionally, what we've done is we focused on technical cyber problems, the intersection of AI and cyber, and some stuff where we can really nerd out on, right? But I thought that your unique background in terms of what you've done would be compelling for the go-to-market types in the audience, right? What did your career path look like? What methodologies did you subscribe to? Tips for dealing with VCs and PEs, because you've been through some mergers, acquisitions, buyouts, you've been through raises, like that type of stuff that would be compelling to that audience, right? So we could gain some interest there. Okay. So let's start with you and your story, right? So started off, like I said, as a consultant at Accenture way back when. What were you focusing on there?
So way back at Accenture, well, I guess it starts probably before that. So, grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, Wilkes-Barre, not your typical like software individual, grew up with dyslexia and other issues. So really took a different approach in how you look at things. And so went to Lafayette, and at Lafayette, before they had their environmental science and some of their other majors, you were able to create your own. So had to go and sell it to the deans and stuff. And I was lucky enough that I convinced them to do it probably right before I graduated. So who knows if I would have, if not. But then a lot of people from Lafayette go to Accenture. But Accenture really didn't want me at first, right? So ended up doing a fellowship, which I was lucky enough with the Justice Department in business and environmental sciences, which landed me at a Booz Allen contract, helping the government look at different strategies, how to change Superfund sites. And so I was really good at convincing people and listening and helping think of economic ways on how to transform those rather than just lawsuits. And so from there, I was fortunate enough, knew some contacts to land at Accenture. And I wanted to figure out why I was recommending, systems and other things as part of these large engagements. And so basically started programming and doing other things and found I wasn't the best programmer. I understood the technology, I could convey it. And at about that time, started a small side business with some other consultants. Right around the time George Shahian was there and started Webvan. And it was, very, very early and similar to ClassPass. It helped consultants find like gyms and stuff when they were on the road. That was, early internet days.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to sell that. So I figured, hey, I'm much better at selling than I am at programming and conveying it. So from there ended up going into sales and just trying it out.
Do you think that at least going down that technical path initially, trying to learn to program, all that helped you become a better salesperson?
Yeah,
Or not really, it just put you on the path of where you were going?
I mean, it put me on the path, but it also helped me to understand it. And I look at, today, and I think if I were starting over, as a BDR and an ISR or someone who wanted to be in enterprise sales, and I think of AI, right? The people that can actually make AI simple and show how it works. Like if you think of an MDR, manage, detect, and respond, and you think of AI versus people doing it at a SOC level, and you can go in and you can talk to a CISO about that because you've actually helped, write the prompts and do the different things. It's a huge advantage from a sales perspective to be able to understand that, put yourself in their view, their worldview. I think it's probably more important today than it was back then. Back then, you could kind of fake your way through it if you could learn a little bit of things because the research and stuff wasn't so easy to find back then.
That makes perfect sense. So when you're looking to hire people on your teams at this point, do you ask them about that? Have you done anything outside of just selling? Do you look for anything in particular along that? Or when they get there, do you put them in like a class to get a certificate in X?
Right. So, when I started, there were training programs at some really good companies, but like Oracle and ADP and others. And, today, most companies don't have the money or the time to do that. So when I look for in individuals is, do they have that X factor? can they actually think and understand the technology and articulate it to who their buyers are and answer why us, why now? And so for me, it's really important to hire people that almost like entrepreneurs want to own their own business and want to learn, right? They have a real thirst for learning. And so you can kind of throw them early into the fire, and yeah, they'll make a few mistakes, but they'll actually be able to really learn and take advantage of it and articulate that. And I think that's really, that's like the value. People say, well, what's the value today going to college, right? Like it's to learn how to learn in these liberal arts degrees. And I think enterprise sales is no different, right? If you're just specialized in tech, you're not going to be as valuable to the organization. It's really, can you articulate those concepts to people, and how does that relate to business and, moving it forward?
Interesting. It makes sense because the game's changed. Like before, it was, this very heavy relationship based, right? Who could you wine and dine? Who wanted to go to a golf tournament? Like just stuff like that. Right now, because there's such a high signal to noise ratio from outreach, you really do have to differentiate yourselves
It's true.
and be asymmetrical to an extent, right? The ones that
I was never typical, right? Like everyone looks like you in sales, right? Like in Silicon Valley, tall, blonde hair, blue eye, they walk out, they can make relationships, they can sell, but look, I'm short, fat from Pennsylvania. And so to your point today, it's those people that see things differently that can, articulate that entrepreneurial, right? They don't have to look a certain type or have a relationship or go golfing. They can articulate those concepts and stand on, that X factor being something else.
Well, it's important because here's what I found when talking to other CROs, CEOs that are hiring, especially for go-to-market roles, is that what happens when your Rolodex dries up? What do you do, right? If you can't call your same 6 friends, how can you create net new, right? And there's got to be, I keep saying asymmetrical, there's got to be different ways that's going to differentiate yourself to get in front of someone, whether it's a podcast like this, right? Whether it's, anything. Right? The ones that think differently, and we interview for this, the ones that think differently have a different plan of attack than I'm just going to go out and do the same thing that everyone else does. Those are the ones that come to the top of the line. Right. We see that time and time again from hiring managers.
To your point, there's lots of tools, but it all comes back to what's that special thing? And is that special thing, similar to the cold call, right? Like your podcast is your cold call, I think. Like it's your calling card, right? It makes you unique. And so who can use that well, innovate and do that? Because it still comes back to the basic thing. And so who really can stand out there and, build a business, because you run out of those contacts really quickly.
Well, that brings up a good point. What are your thoughts on cold calling these days? Some people are like, it's dead. Some people are very much the opposite, saying, it's a marketing thing. People aren't going to pick up a random phone number anymore. We know that, right? But there is some value in leaving a message, putting your name out there. Sometimes you will get people. But what are your thoughts, though, for new reps and cold calling?
So believe it or not, even a CRO and CEO, I still cold call for big accounts or things we need or things we want.
Nice.
And I find it really super effective. I think AI has changed the game in a lot of the ways, but just like there's AI software, companies are smart and they know how to block that, right? Like they know what to do to avoid that. And very few people want to cold call the CFO anymore. Like in some weird sense, everyone calls in tech the CIO or the CTO, or in cyber the CISO, right? But very few people want to call the CFO. And so I find like they'll talk to you and you can cold call. So I actually think that's kind of become in vogue again in certain respects. It's like the art, that 10% art of sales. You can control the whole process, CRM and all these other things. And there's all these sales trainings, and they're all they're good, and they are rails, and they help keep a process structured, but there's still some art to it because it's about relationship. At the end of the day, people, they buy from people that they can trust, right? Like, and that will be there when things get hard, because inevitably they always do. Even if you're the best cyber company in the world, a la CrowdStrike, you could still have downtime or a breach. It just, things happen.
The CFO is an interesting one. I haven't heard that yet, but it makes sense that you want to call on people that aren't getting just deluged daily with calls, right? If you're calling the CFO of it's called a Fortune 500 organization or even Fortune 1000, right? Is there a pitch? Is there a strategy? Are you going in looking at dollars and savings? Or is it still the same sales methodology of, hey, I'm Eric, I'm with X, let's talk and figure out what the problems are?
No, I think you need to know why us, why now, and look at their financial reports and their strategic goals and how you can help them achieve that, right? Because they have real objectives. And then it's let's talk, let's solve the problem together. If you fundamentally believe we can leave you in a better place. And that was drilled into me, very early on at Workday. That was one of the ways they really transformed the market. They went where no one else was. They went after the CFO for a multi-tenant cloud platform, and everyone else was stuck at the CTO or the CIO, and they went in doing that for ERP, and it was groundbreaking. And so and it works for a lot of things, even for cyber, because at the end of the day, when a breach happens or something happens, the CFO is the one who ultimately, or the CEO, that it falls to, either from a risk or an insurance or loss of trust or loss of revenue with the clients. And so, how do you help them and the board meet their objectives, don't have avoid a breach, right, and have fiduciary responsibility? And I think that's really important.
Let's go back to the financial reports. If you're starting off, right, and you're doing your research, what are some things you're looking for in those reports to potentially target or bring up on a call?
Well, what kills me today is there's more information available, right?
Mhm.
But people that use phones, and that's all of us, their attention spans are short. And so I find a lot of sales reps today, they don't know their competitors, their products, and they don't know the company they're selling to. And it's so easy with like Chat GPT. You literally can pull it up, in LinkedIn, you can do 6 degrees. And so it's really important to go and look at, say, their 10 or another financial metric, and say, here's their top 10 initiatives this year. And how does that align to with what you're doing? If it's a pharma company and they're talking about a new drug they're rolling out, supply chain, well, they have a lot of IP there and a lot of patents and trademarks and IP. So they have PII and they have IP. So, how are you going to, from a cybersecurity perspective, like at Fidelis when we were there, how are you going to protect that, right? How are you going to make sure their network has DLP on it, and that it's not going to be breached if somebody gets through the endpoint, and if they are, what are the things you can do to help protect them, so they don't let down their suppliers or their customers, so to speak, as well as their employees. And I think that's really important. And those are the kind of metrics, you look at and tie it back to why the CFO would care.
Makes sense. It's a great point. And it's a different way of going about it, like we've been talking about already throughout this whole thing. Zig when others zag. That's how you get ahead. You brought up Fidelis. That's an interesting one. Let's talk about how that journey and how you went from CRO to CEO and lessons learned.
Sure. So Fidelis is an awesome company that few people probably know about. It was in the DC area. It started out as a small company doing network detection response. Was owned by private equity, and then they did several acquisitions and were owned by a big defense contractor. They added deception, they added EDR. They had gone through several CEOs, and I joined because one of the CFOs there I knew from my Workday days. He was a CFO at another large ERP, and he was brought on by the PE firm to turn it around. After about 15 years, they were still burning money but growing. They were about 300 people, just shy of 70 million in ARR, and they had a federal business, and they had what I'd call international business, mostly Middle East, Eastern Europe. And then they had a business for large companies in the United States that were regulated industries that had a lot of IP or PII, personally identified information.
Mm-hmm.
And so really one of the things we did is there were three business units, almost independent: the international, the federal. And so started as CRO. One of the things we did was consolidate centrally the CRM. We consolidated, our go-to-market message in our playbooks. So we knew why Fidelis, why now. We did that across. And through that, we were really able to start saying, okay, here's how we solve these issues around IP and PII. And we just changed the whole approach. And we took some of the things we did in federal with those defense and three-letter agencies to, oh, because we had a secured facility, okay, well, a defense industrial base, some of the large SIs have similar issues. And so how do we solve those? And we started spreading that out throughout the group. And then we consolidated the inside sales group. And the inside sales group came in and they really did a good job of delivering that message. And so we were successful in, turning the business, growing it, got a large debt equity. And so because of that was lucky enough when the gentleman who brought me in went to a public SPAC in the space, they said, okay, well, you've had your two best quarters. Would you have an interest in stepping into that role? We're going to look to exit now that the company's close to being, positive in EBITDA. And so that was kind of the approach.
Gotcha. And then so you took that on.
Yeah.
Right. And what happened from there?
From there, we continued to operate, and then we sold to a buy-hold PE firm, and it's still in existence.
Nice.
Still growing, and so it was good. It was a large turnaround. Had times been different or a few years earlier, who knows what it would have been? Because I kind of look at the NDR space is kind of like your dad's tennis shoes, right? Like they're always needed, but they go in vogue, they fall out of vogue, they go in vogue. It's kind of like EDR's everything over the last few years, but really once the perimeter's breached, you need to make sure your network's not, and they were kind of the DLP guys at the time.
It's funny you bring that up. What all my kids that are teenagers wear now?
Yeah,
New Balances. That's the thing.
Yeah. Right? We'll be cool for 6 months, you and I. That's about it.
Yep, that's about it. And they're on to the next. Oh my gosh, that's funny. All right, well, that's cool. Let's talk about, so before that you were at Brightfield, right?
Yep.
And how was that? A couple CRO gigs, VPs of sales
gigs. It was
gigs.
Awesome. It was a great time during COVID. It was what I call one of the first really cool AI platforms. So it's a workforce management platform, and it was called the Talent Data Exchange, or TDX. And it could tell you what, say, an Oracle database individual, and being in your space, this probably would be helpful, should cost a large company at this time, if they source it from, say, Detroit, or they source it from, say, the Middle East or Europe. They can tell you what the going rates are. So it was AI taking all of these job descriptions and saying, here's what the going rate is across for these large global companies. So they could actually budget it and work with recruiters and know what the right metrics were to pay. And so it was pretty cool, the Talent Data Exchange, from that standpoint. It was easy to articulate the value, especially why us, why now. Like if you think about during COVID, healthcare, right? Healthcare, like they needed IT people because it was COVID, they needed nurses. So it was relatively easy to say, okay, well, you should use these metrics and SOWs. And since then, that entire market has exploded with some really cool companies such as Globality and others. So
was that company created during COVID, or was
it before that, a few years before?
That was the right line, and they got lightning struck.
Yeah, and it was about the time that Workday acquired Vinly. They were a big partner of Beeline, and in that vendor management space, it's when AGS and some of the other MSPs in the recruitment space really started to standardize on SOW systems and job recs. So
interesting, very cool.
And for me, it was kind of a full circle of AI because years and years ago, when applicant tracking was like in its infancy, I was at a small company in Portland, Maine that competed with Verve, Telexa, Taleo, those companies, Connexa. So
cool. Well, you brought up AI, and that was pretty nascent in 2020, 2021. Right now, it's all the rage, especially being at RSA, and that's everyone's AI, which is fine, right? Some do it better than others. What have you seen out in the marketplace, whether it's AI or whether it's something completely different, that's new and exciting and compelling to you? What makes you go, oh, that's cool?
Yeah, I think, when you start to look at areas that, at least in cyber where I am, that is really awesome is when you're in the network detection response space, most of those have SOCs. And whether it's an MDR or an MSP that's running a SOC, it's how many analysts can you hire? and that's the scalable part. And everyone says, well, AI is going to, replace people. And I look at that industry and I say, well, no, you're still going to need a lot of people, but now it allows one tech or one SOC analyst to do hundreds with AI, right? So you can actually do a really good job on all your clients. And, it's no different a SOC analyst than if you think of like an air traffic controller with lots of flights coming, right? You get tired, your eyes, there's fatigue, but AI doesn't get tired. And so the reality is you don't get alert fatigue anymore, which is really good. So the person can actually triage the real problems for companies, the real nation state actors that are doing bad things, but AI has enabled them to do it, on across a grand scale. And I think of, what IronNet or the original General Alexander, who came from NSA, his idea of a collective dome that brought all this together. I think that's the early infancy, that AI model to really do it at scale. And so that's pretty cool from an
Yeah,
AI
I've seen a
standpoint.
lot of neat things coming from people that I know well and have known for a while in regards to AI agents in the SOC, and it's really fascinating to see what direction that's going to go.
Yeah, no, it's
It's definitely a force multiplier at the least,
and
right?
if you think of like all these companies now rolling out, nuclear power like IP3 is doing with a lot of these companies, that's Admiral Hewitt. They're putting in all of these small reactors and
Mm-hmm.
energy for massive data centers, right, all over because the big guys in the space require that to power AI. But then that brings a lot of SOC analysts, and the only way to do that is you can't train and hire that many people. There's just a shortage. So AI allows you to do it at scale, so you can take advantage of that. So it's almost like a self-sustaining system.
Very true. That whole power thing's a unique conundrum. I mean, I'm out in Loudoun County, which is like data center central, right? There's a new one going up every second, and they have their own power facilities. But at some point, and I've read reports on it where it's like there ain't enough. You need to get some things online and going. So it's fascinating to watch that space and what's
And
going to
then they have
happen
to
there too.
secure them, and you can't. You need AI to help scale that securing it. There's just not enough bodies.
Very true. All right, let's flip it a little bit. So you've grown, managed lots of sales teams,
Yep.
right? When you're coming into a new company, not one from scratch per se, but one that's been there for a little bit and maybe it's kind of just doing its thing, but you really want to take it to the next level and accelerate. What are the steps that you take? What's the first thing that you do when you get there? And then walk us through your process on your first 30, 60, 90 days and how you execute.
Most companies have really good people and people
Mm-hmm.
who really want to do a good job, and they just get stuck. And so, can you come in and can you answer two fundamental questions? Why us? Why now? And, enable those people to be empowered to do that. And so, you know, less meetings, right? Over time, people get a lot of meetings, right? And they're internal, they're not focused on selling. Are they using those CRM processes to say, here's our win sheet, here's our value engineering, here's how, if you get a deal, you work it backwards to, from the close date to why us, why now? And so just getting people energized about the easy things and empowering them so they think like a startup. Most people that are in sales, they did it because they listen, they have empathy, they're entrepreneurial, they want to make a difference. And so, I'm usually not the smartest guy in the room. I like to hire people that are way smarter and will take my job. And so empower them. And so that's the first. So you can start to, unlock a lot of those things. And so even industries where maybe you're not on a growth trajectory, or like you said, it's a turnaround or they've slowed. If you do some of those small things, they have big impacts almost immediately, in a 30, 60 day. So then you can start to get more strategic and start to do things like, you know, corporate visits and playing the 6 degrees of separation, who on your investment team can help, close deals because you do that. But that's after you just do kind of the small things, right? And stack the wins. And if you stack the wins, on object in motion kind of stays in motion.
Very cool. Now, what about if you're coming in fresh? Company just raised a pretty healthy VC round, right? You're like, all right, go forth and build your team. What do you do there? Do you go to your people that you worked with before? Do you go for people that are newer that you can mold? But what are you
Look
thinking
at
on
the
that when that
product.
happens?
And I try to understand why someone would use it, what problem you're solving, and then it's going to people probably that you worked with in the past, but also people you don't know in general to be a design partner. And and help you develop it and really improve it and think outside the box. And so it's the approach of both, and get, 5 or 10 clients that you can really then repeat that process and start to put in a structured process of, here's how we go to market. Here's all the things we want to do. And, then it's easy to build out what everyone else does, territory plans, and, here's our sales process. But in the beginning, and, for me, I'm a roll up your sleeves kind of guy, more like the pickup truck of sales. I'm not real good at managing up. It's more about building the business and getting the sales, right? Like, and so I enjoy going and listening. I guess once you're at a certain point, you're so big, that's probably not where I fit as well. And so, those are some of the things I think about when you go out there. And remember, um, if you're passionate about it and you're genuine with people, they'll generally listen, especially when you're starting out. So
Great advice. Very cool. When you're interviewing people that you don't know, right? The ones that you know, you're still going to take them through the process. Awesome, right? But the ones that you don't know, we talked about before that you look for the entrepreneurial spirit and a genuine curiosity and all that. What are some of the questions that you would ask in an interview to uncover those sort of things or traits and characteristics of a person?
yeah, I know everyone has, you're supposed to ask the stock questions about, the sales process and everything. What I really want to do is I ask a lot of questions that try to get to the core of who an individual is and what's their general curiosity. I don't care what it's about, just that they have some hobby that they're curious about. Because if they have a passion, you're going to see how they get behind it. And if you can unlock that passion with what you're selling, then they'll be successful. And so for me, it's really, what's their curiosity to learn? How can they teach me something about that? What makes them tick in a general level? And so, because I think then that shows you they have that X factor or that real interest to learn. Because good sales, you're a shrink, you're an air traffic controller, you listen more than you talk, right? You play 5 different roles. And so if I can understand what you're passionate about and you can make me feel some connection to that, then generally you're probably going to be great. So I find the most interesting interviews are the ones you don't know versus the ones you do know, right? Because you come with no preconceived ideas. So for me, it's probably easier if you don't know me than if you do, right? When you're interviewing, because
Yep.
I come in, thinking I'm going to learn something new and really, feel that way about their passion. So,
What's the most interesting hobby that someone that you've talked to has had? Where you're just like, what?
I mean, there's been so many. I guess one was interviewed and hired someone that did in the Olympics. What's that game called where they push that big thing on the ice and
Curling.
curling? Yeah. So like, and they became an Olympic. That's not something, but and quite frankly, it's probably monotonous at a lot of times, right? Until you get to the Olympics, right? Because they're just hours, and so to see somebody stick through it 5-10 years, right? Like that tells you a lot about them and all the intricacies and the ice and the consistency and the all the why they use different brushes and all those things. And so
That's wild. I have one of my buddies on the street. It's from Chicago. Was in Chicago for a while, and he said they actually have curling bars in Chicago
that's
where you go
unbelievable.
and guys sit and have beer and then watch curling
But I
games
think
go
it's a
on.
big thing. My daughter goes to the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and apparently they have intramural broom balls, and her team is like in the championship.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so interesting, and yeah, interesting.
Cool. All right. So last kind of topic subject I want to bring up, talk about is, obviously being a vendor in the cyber side, you've had a decent amount of interaction with venture capital and private equity. Any memorable experiences there that are worth sharing, or any tips, methodologies that you would give to founders out there as they're navigating that?
Yeah, I think um, it's really important to find somebody there. I know everyone says, "Well, we just have to raise money." My whole thing is bootstrap it till you can get it to where it needs to be. The product should sell, and then find somebody who shares your vision, and you know, doesn't want to take so much that the employees don't benefit. The employees have to benefit, not just the management team, not just the founding team. And so it's really important to find a group there, because then when the times get tough, and they always get tough, whether you're, unicorn or not, there's always some issue that no one's aware of, right? They just don't realize. And so are they going to stick by you during that time? Or are they going to use that to their advantage, right? And so make sure they share your passion, they see the same belief. And so I think that's hard to do, but it's really important because I've been through several where you haven't seen that. And when times get tough, in the end, the investment firm comes out great, but the founders sometimes don't, and the employees, and that's not good because a lot of these people they give everything they have for years, and they go above and beyond, and they get behind the cause, and they really feel passionate about it, like we've talked about. And so, you got to find an investor. I feel that feels the same way.
Well, how do you mitigate that or combat? Is it up front evaluating what the term sheet is and
I think so,
understanding
but I
that?
think it's about talking to their other invest the other properties they've invested in, and how was the experience, and would you do it again if you had to, and when things went bad, why did they go bad, and what was the outcome, and how did you work together? I think it's important for both the executive team and the founders before they sign that to know what they're getting into exactly, and then see the term sheet.
That's great advice. I'm sure there's tons of first time founders that are just excited that someone shows a little bit of interest. Like, oh, yeah, this is great. I'll take 10 mil. What are you giving
Right.
up?
Right.
Right.
And then, if they have all these different levers and stuff and you sell for 100 million and, you make 2 million, most of these people that start these businesses are super smart. They could have gone to work for somebody and made more than that during that period of time. And so that's a lot. And then the employees that are there, I mean, if they get away with a few 100,000, that they could have gone and worked somewhere else at a bigger company. Not that there's anything wrong with either approach. It's just, everyone should enjoy a ride. So I guess, so to speak, when you do a good job.
Well, it's important to enjoy the ride. I mean, we only got one turn on this earth. We got to make sure
Right.
we enjoy it the best that we can.
I agree.
Good deal, bud. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it. Rick said we're right at about 30 minutes or so. It's good having you on. A lot of good insights for the people, a lot of good stories. Appreciate you. Thanks, Eric.
Appreciate it. Thank you.